call. Good morning. I'm Denise McClary. I'm the Executive Director for the Greater Columbus Apartment Association. And today we have, there's Miss Lindsay. Let me let her in. We are going to have guest speakers come and talk to us about a rental housing program with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. I still have people coming in, so let me get these admitted. All righty. I'd like to introduce Adam Graham. He is with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. He is a landlord engagement specialist, and also joining him is Katie Arney. Did I say that the right way, Katie? Okay. She is also a landlord specialist that is joining us. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Adam and let him begin. If you have any questions, you can use the chat box. I'll be glad to help facilitate, I'm sure Katie too, facilitate any kind of questions at the end of his presentation and kind of go from there. So Adam, welcome. Katie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today. Let me introduce myself a bit before I pull up my presentation. My name is Adam Graham, and along with Katie, we are landlord engagement specialists with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. And this is a new role that was made possible by CARES funding that was passed last summer. And our main role is to assist some of the partners that have received community grants from Department of Community Affairs, like Pat from United Way, Homes for Good. We've got Miss Janice Jones from New Horizons Behavioral Health. She's also one of our community partners. And they're providing services out to the community. They're finding the households of people that have suffered or experienced homelessness or housing instability as a result of the effects of the pandemic. And so Katie and the role that Katie and I play is that housing piece. It is building a housing portfolio for all of our community partners to either help maintain housing for folks that might be at risk or to find new places for people that have already just need another place to go. And our mission is outreach to you all. And so I sent a blast about a month ago now to the various apartment associations, chambers of commerce, boards of realty, just to seek landlords, property owners, property managers, and to communicate what this program is and what it does and how the benefits and the financial incentives that it can provide to owners and managers. So I will pull up my screen now. Okay, so we are seeing an increased amount of individuals and families that experiencing homelessness, some kind of housing instability as impacted by COVID-19. And in some ways, this situation is similar to the images we saw last summer, of people who, the long lines at the food banks, at the food pantries, the various giveaways, and some of these households, this was their first time. Any other given year, any other circumstance, they would not be in that line. But because of some of the effects of the lockdown, the pandemic, maybe having children at home for virtual schooling and having to shift hours to try to accommodate that, we have seen that same kind of effect not only on the food system, but then also in housing. But then we also know, and we knew this prior to the pandemic as well, that there's a disconnect sometimes between those service providers that care for, that identify, that seek to help persons experiencing homelessness, and the property owners. Sometimes they're talking two different languages, and sometimes, and because of that different languages, that translates then to maybe some resistance on the part of housing these populations, and then a lot of areas there's just a lack of housing options anyway, whether that's because of occupancy rates or just a lack of inventory to begin with. I've talked to a lot of communities across the state where it's not necessarily, they would love to be in a program like this. There's just, the units aren't there. And some of that has to do with the moratorium and that mechanism of not, unfortunately, opening up some units. And then we also know that while some of these tenants, that the effects of the pandemic have just brought on things that were already there. It's affected some of the low-hanging fruit, as it were. And while we might be all in the same flood, we're not necessarily in the same boats. Some of us are on floating chairs. And so some of these same issues that we know that have been in the past, as far as previous rental history, maybe some not the best backgrounds and evictions, that just adds to the program that some of the problems that some of the effects of those households affected by the pandemic face. So we're here as landlord engagement specialists, Katie and I, to seek out property owners and property landlords within the various areas. And there's a link to a map where you can see we cover the whole state in partnership with different community agencies across the state. And so in the counties that are kind of on the western Chattahoochee Valley, we're here that's why we're here with Pat and with Janice to help with this Greater Columbus Apartment Association to help locate owners and managers in that area. And then we're here to express the program benefits so that we can build capacity for those permanent housing options and make that link together between property managers and providers. We're here, as I said earlier, about sometimes it seems they're speaking two different languages. A provider is rightfully so advocating for their person, trying to getting them into housing, while the property owner, property manager is having to take all the risk and awareness of the investment into their property and wanting to make sure that there is a valid return. Katie and I are, if we use that language image, we're the translators. We're the ones to help translate that language of concern and investment and make that link happen. And so with some of the possible benefits of partnership that we see, and Katie is not as new as she was, and so when I developed this presentation, it was all me. So maybe at some point I'll let her say a few slides. We see lower marketing costs for property managers. Most of our agencies, nearly all of them, have enrolled clients, and so they're ready. If you have a unit, they're ready to put someone into it. Before I moved to Georgia about 3 years ago, I was in the same role that you all were. I worked for an affordable housing provider, one of the largest in Nashville. We were the largest nonprofit provider of affordable housing, and we knew about heads on beds. And while we had some NSP2 and home grants to actually get the buildings, it was the rent revenues that took care of the everyday operating expenses, the maintenance, the costs of the property, making sure that we had a replacement reserve in case we needed a new roof. So here's a steady flow of tenants that make sure that no unit goes unoccupied. And these tenants will be accompanied by active case management. And that's why we have our partners on the call today, so that you can learn a little bit more about their services. There's on-time rent payments and rent subsidies. Katie and I are here for mediation, conflict resolution. If there's something coming on between you and a provider, we're here to be kind of a third party to those conversations. And our hope is that with these supportive services, with supported rent as well for a time-limited amount, that helps minimize your eviction costs, making these not just people to occupy the unit, but long-time renters, long-time tenants, to keep that rental revenue coming in. Because we'd rather have people in units longer than just keep cycling people through. And so for this program, which is the Emergency Solutions Grant, kind of boost from the CARES Act, we do have some incentives to offer landlords for working with our community partners. We can cover security deposits, utility deposits, first last month's rent, and then any administrative fees up to 3 times the monthly rent. So what do we mean by an administrative fee? Well, that's just a catch-all term for us. So we talked previously about people that might not have the best backgrounds, the best rental history. We may be able to kind of put some money into an escrow, not a real one, but just, we might be able to pay a little bit more on the security deposit, on, another month's rent, something along those lines, as kind of some earnest money that we will be working with you all. We will be working with the tenant. And then on a case-by-case basis, and all of this is kind of, it just depends on the tenant. Possibility of supported rent up to 12 months. Some of these households, some of these tenants are employed. They might just need help with the move-in costs. They can't save up enough for the security deposit, for the utility costs, all that startup cash that it takes to get into a unit. And so this grant is just simply to help get them in, make sure they stay in. Others need that supported rent as they undergo those services to increase income, to become more stable in that unit, but they needed that housing to become stable, to have a place for transit to pick them up for appointments, for to see their doctor, or to have a headquarters if nothing else. For existing tenants, we can cover some property damage. If we know that with the moratorium on it, it's right now it's for financial evictions, and so if there's other reasons, if property damage is one of the reasons why you might be seeking possession of the unit, we might be able to cover some of that cost if that's the only thing, and there might be some caveat of services involved there. And then I say this last bullet point with brackets, and our providers know why, and Katie knows why too. Possible rent arrearages. The first bracket is that we are aware that there is another program coming down the pipeline, and you have probably read about the Treasury Department assistance. It is there. We're just not sure how to access it yet. That's being built up, and we should know more within the coming weeks. And I am happy to spread that information as soon as we get it. So my contact information is at the end of the presentation. It's there. You can screenshot the slide and send me all the questions that you want, and I'm happy to pass those on as we kind of develop that. And some of and that's for the balance of state counties. I'll also add that to it. So Columbus might have applied to that separately, but so that's bracket number 1. Bracket number 2 is this grant that we're talking about that does the security deposits, the utility deposits. Until the moratorium ends, that money is being held at the federal level until. So, and that's because of the mechanics. So I just want to make that information out there. I know a lot of you are probably here on behalf of those tenants that have arrearages. This is the best information I can give you now. Keep us in mind. And as soon as that opens up, we can keep everybody informed of the proper ways to go through those channels. And then we're also here just to provide kind of the technical assistance. As we mentioned earlier, we do help and maintain a housing search database for our community partners and for the public. And a lot of you may post units on Georgia Housing Search. And we ask that you keep that as updated as possible. And then oh, okay. Pat's chatting in to say that they do have other options in the community from non-federal funders. So there is a possibility as well. And I'll kind of introduce, when we open for questions, we'll make it a free-for-all. Landlord-tenant disputes, barriers to entry with providers. We're happy to talk about how we could get a person in. If they're not meeting the qualifications, I should just keep this up. Oh, you're welcome. And lease addenda. So what we're talking about as far as some lease addenda. So this program is also not like maybe some of you that have participated in the housing vouchers, formerly called Section 8, or maybe you have some VASH recipients in your units, vouchers between the VA and HUD. This is a different program. This is not kind of while it is permanent in our intent to get people into units as quickly as possible and have them remain there as long as possible, this is more of a time limited. We're doing that initial investment into the tenant and to get them built up to where they need to be so that they can take care of they can become the tenant. They can handle the expenses. And so as a result, this program is a little less stringent than the housing quality standards required for voucher programs. It doesn't require a HUD certified inspector. Caseworkers can evaluate the property, and they're just checking for basic standards. Is it a sound structure? Is there adequate electricity, water, and HVAC? Is there proper safety? Is there enough living space for the household size that's going in there? And even right now, some of them are just submitting pictures to us saying, we went through, here's the pictures, submit the checklist. And that's one way we're able to keep this program going during COVID, where some face-to-face is not happening. And then we also, and there may be some discussion on this, we also do require the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act lease addendum. And it just protects all victims of domestic violence regardless of gender, certification required. And Katie and I are happy to provide specific training to you all about how this addendum can fit into your leases, what it protects, what it doesn't. We don't want the habitability standards or the VAWA addendum to be a barrier on your part. So anything that we can do to kind of help talk through what's required on a one-on-one basis, we're happy to make that possible. And so just feel free to email me and we can definitely talk. Or if you're part of kind of a regional group and you'd like all your property managers in, I'm happy to do that as well. Because we are statewide. So what your policy is here in Columbus is probably the same thing you've got in LaGrange and probably the same thing you might have over in Savannah. So anything we can do to help statewide. I do have a one-pager that I originally sent to the apartment associations. They may have forwarded it to you as an invitation to this meeting. So if you want just a breakdown, one-pager, I'm also happy to send that to you. And then I am going to briefly, I tell you what, put up this is our contact information for both Katie and myself. I will say this about the phone number. It is for an online VoIP that comes to my computer. So it does come through. I can get voicemails, but that's primarily how it is. I get the voicemail first and I respond because then it sends me an email that says to call you back. So I would say email is number one preference for me. And I am usually 90% on top of all of them. And so now, I guess it can be Q&A time. And we can just talk.
Yeah, and Adam, before we move into the Q&A, should we let our service partners introduce themselves real quick as well?
Yes. Thank you, Katie.
Mhm.
I'm Pat with Home for Good, a program of the United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley. We have received ESG CARES funding for a 7-county region that surrounds surrounds Columbus. And again, this is a state fund, so it stops at the river. It doesn't go into the Alabama side. Just an FYI to let everybody know that.
Mm-hmm.
However, and we'll go into talking about other funding sources for, prevention and those kinds of things. But we do have relationships and fundings that do cross the river. So just an FYI if we want to talk about that too. Thanks.
Uh-oh.
Good morning. I'm Janice Jones with New Horizons Behavioral Health. The ESG CV new grant that we received. Most of my areas are in the rural areas. So I'm here to learn a little bit more of what I can do to boost up some possible landlord opportunities in the rural areas and what I can tell them that they can benefit from becoming, possible landlords because it's such a rural area. So, but that's me, Janice. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. Katie, you want to maybe introduce yourself too?
Sure, since you haven't really heard my voice yet today, but I'm Katie Arney. I'm the other landlord engagement specialist with the Department of Community Affairs. I am about a month into this position, so I don't know all of the answers to your questions, but I will try my best to answer as well as I can. And obviously Adam and Pat and Janice are here to answer questions as well. Thank you.
So that kind of then opens us up. I'm trying to keep this about 20 minutes, I know, is my presentation, so I'm trying to make our time as useful as possible. So what questions do you have and how can we help?
Adam, if I can say, again, this is Pat with Home for Good at the United Way. This conversation actually about landlord engagement actually started last year before the pandemic with Louis Robinson and Michelle Zach, who serve as board members of our Continuum of Care, which covers Muskogee and Russell County. That's a federal designation for the organizations who come together to meet the needs of the homeless in a certain geographical region, and it's always done by counties. Of course, ours crosses the river. So this is part of a larger conversation. But I'll just go ahead and say some of the things that Adam was talking about case management and that relationship and having a relationship between a landlord and a tenant and how those things can be enhanced or stabilized or problems mitigated or whatever. That's what we have spent probably 4 years in building a system to do, in having a standardized case management program. And I say standardized because there are certain things that have to be done. And then the other things are based on the needs of the client. So we have an entire process starting from the time someone raises their hand and says, I need help, I'm homeless, or I need help with rent, to the point where we have not only secured permanent housing, but we're sustaining that permanent housing. And that's what this is about all of us coming together, whether it be making sure that those property managers who have safe, affordable housing have a steady stream of clients or tenants for those. We want to partner with that. We want to be able to make sure that the needs of everyone's being met. If the tenants get their needs met by housing, then the property management company gets their needs met. And it's an overall better way for everybody in the community. I could get on my soapbox and I could be here all day. So that's the key is having that standardization of that case management of making sure that, we do the inspections prior to the client moving in. We're not having someone to tell the client, well, you have to get the utilities turned on so I can do the repairs. And 3 months later, the client who's never moved into the unit then has a light bill for 3 months because they were convinced to put it. So those are the kinds of things that we as organizations have worked really, really hard to make sure that we protect everybody's interest across the board. I'll hush now.
This is Louis Robinson. I'll like to continue on what Pat was talking about. Michelle and I, of course, been working trying to get a group such as yourself to join us so that we have an awful lot in common. And Pat and all the others that have been agencies have been doing a tremendous job, except in one thing. And this is my personal opinion, and that is prevention funds. Prevention from what? Prevention from evictions. We just don't have anybody basically and don't have any funding basically. But what we're working toward is asking you people with the apartment owners and then get all the other landlords in town to form a landlord meeting group that we can address all these issues. And I think that we're trying to do it and been trying to do it for some time. But it's hard to do some of these things unless we have funds to talk about, new funds, like prevention funds. And these things will work. And you would have a spokesman on the board with Michelle and I, especially. I'm an individual landlord. But the whole thing has gotten out of hand because like they gave all these CDC eviction stoppages but no funding to what is going to help the landlord. So I'm here representing all of us landlords in whatever loose way it will be, because I believe truly that somehow Pat one day is going to tell me we've got funds coming. And so you can't believe how hard it is to get it. And she's got documents saying we've got a lot of money coming, but the prevention part has not been funded. So we're trying to put together, and with Adam's help, we need somebody like Adam to come in and look at everything that is being done, but y'all have a greater insight because you see the state funds. But there's a lot of funds available and there's a lot going on in the community. But right now it is almost very critical that we get together and have one voice. And then when the funds do come, we'll be prepared to help the landlords, especially with those tenants that are already behind. And so I'm like, Pat, I need to get off my soapbox because but this is really what we're trying to do. And we appreciate your being here today and hope that, in the near future, we will have some funds to even talk specifically about.
Okay, if I may interject, Adam, this is Terry Edwards at New Horizons.
Oh, great. Yes.
Hi, Pat. New Horizons has prevention funds. It's a grant we just received. So we have some prevention funds. What would really help is if we all work together, like Pat says, so that all the organizations come together to know what we have in the pot. It's one pot. Columbus is one big pot, or in my count is. So we all put everything in the pot and we know how to dole it out to different clients. I do a rapid rehousing program in 7 rural counties. It's through the Balance Estate. I've had some success because being in the rural counties is very different from being in the city, and you have to understand that. You have to understand it's a different state of mind. You have to understand you're going in as a person who is unknown to them, as a stranger. One of the things I had to do was I had to be there a lot, because I've always said, if you come to my house every single day, eventually you're going to become family. So that's what has happened. Unless we become family in the counties, unless we do the thing where we are there almost, it's just to know that we're there. Because they don't have, we don't have shelters in the counties. We do not have, internet services is spotty. I've gotten lost several times because my phone goes down and I have no clue where I am. I remember one day calling my husband to say, I'm not coming home, baby, I'm lost. And I was almost crying. So we're gonna have to put more resources in our rural counties because we need to. We're gonna house them. if somebody gets homeless in a rural county, there are no shelters for them to go to. There might be a shed. I've had people in sheds. That is a terrible situation. And it also means that they don't have internet to go online to say, let me go check somebody. They don't have that. They may have a phone. A lot of times the phones are off. I've had clients where I call them today, tomorrow the phone is off. That being said, my main thing is we have to put everything in the pot and work together to get our clients housed. Well, Mr. Robbins, we do have some prevention funds.
Well, I'm glad to hear it because, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just reading back, Terry, I think we need to clarify because the email we got, because we did set up the prevention funds for New Horizons, but it clearly said after the moratorium was lifted. So I think we might want to clarify, just to be sure.
I think we have prevention funds. Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
Yeah, we just want to make sure, because that's what I was just doing, because I was going back, it came from New Horizons management last week, saying that it was after the moratorium.
That we can use it, okay.
Yeah, so we might want to just make sure. But having these communications, and Terry's right, but Terry and I have been family for what, 3 or 4 years, 5 years now? Yeah. But it's right, because it's all about relationships. And that's what I was going to say when Louis was talking. It is about relationships. It's about making sure that we feel comfortable enough in having those very difficult and hard conversations with each other. And we want to make sure that the needs of the landlords are being met, because you know what, without landlords, without property manager, without apartment complexes or whatever, we're not going to be able to house people. And housing is what we do. So it literally is a combining of resources and a combining of efforts. But also, we were talking in our office just this morning during our morning huddle. We want to spotlight those property management agencies, entities who consistently can pass the inspections, consistently work with clients to make sure that things are safe and sound. We want, I believe it in recognition for those who are doing good work. Now, we cannot and will not, steer anyone in the direction of any one complex agency or whatever, but we can certainly say these are the ones who consistently meet the mark. And on the flip side of that, when you're looking at that list, at least from my perspective, when you're looking at the list and these are the ones that consistently meet the mark, people are also looking for who's not there. So it's a little positive peer pressure there.
I just want to say something on behalf of my experiences. I'm a little bit different property than most of the apartment association members because I am a senior facility and I am affordable. However, I have used the services, the case management services for several of my clients, or my residents as we call them. And I have to advocate for you guys trying to get involved with this program. I know a lot of your properties are more high end than the properties that most of their clients are going to fit into, but you might have some that will still fit in. And I urge you to take advantage of it because I have clients that will only talk to their case managers. And I also have residents who feel more comfortable talking to me. And then I go to their case manager and say, hey, Mr. Jones needs help with food. Mr. Jones is having a problem getting to his doctor, etc. So all the little things that go into making a positive living experience for the residents all comes together with this program. If the resident is having a problem with their neighbor, they can tell their case manager, who can then comes to me and say, hey, Mr. Jones and Mr. Thomas keep getting into a verbal altercation. We need to do something to keep it from escalating. Or if I do an inspection and I see that Mr. Jones's apartment is not up to the standards it's supposed to be in, I can tell his case manager, and before it gets to the point where we have to give him a notice to vacate, we all work together to get Mr. Jones's apartment up to the standards it needs to be. And I totally agree with what everybody is saying. We have to all work together. This is not a us versus them kind of situation. It's an all of us kind of a situation. So on behalf of the corporate side of it, I truly advocate that we, as many of us can, take advantage of these programs and get involved.
I have a couple of questions. This is Lindsay Booth.
Sure.
One, just to clarify for everybody on the call, when we talk about prevention funds, are we talking, we're referring to residents who are already living in a home and need help with rent currently? Is that just to clarify?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that, now the other question is, if a person did have a resident or an applicant that did need help, how does that process begin with your program?
If I can go, Adam?
Yeah, I was about to say it depends on where they are. So if
Right.
they're in Columbus, Muskogee, they'll see Pat. If they're in some of the outlying counties like Harris and Chattahoochee,
Edwards.
Whitman, they'll see New Horizons. But either
Well, not necessarily, because we have a 7-county region around Columbus that we got our DCA. Yes, we're don't make me remember all the names because I always leave one out. But everything starts with a call or an interaction with coordinated entry. And I could go on to explain all of that, but it's the access point. It's the central access point to all services related to homelessness and or housing. And I will put in our community, it's 211. It's also available online at our website. So I'll put that in the chat box, but everything starts with a call to 211 because it's a centralized assessment, or I'm sorry, a coordinated assessment. Everyone gets the same questions, and the clients or prospective tenants can be referred to the proper agency to assist them. You can always call me, and I'll put my number in the chat box as well, but everything has to start with coordinated entry.
Okay.
Ms. Pat, there was a question in our box I wanted to kind of clarify for the group. We had Ms. Cynthia ask, is the partners limited to only helping in Georgia? Now, before you said that you only go to the river, but you have maybe some connections that can help in Alabama properties, because we're on both sides of the river. Can you kind of tell us what the Phoenix City properties might be able to? Do they need to contact you, or can you kind of let us know what those partners are?
Sure. Okay. For the purposes of the Department of Community Affairs, or the ESG CV funds, that has to stop at the river because that's a Georgia funded program. Okay. We have partners and agencies across the river that can assist. There's not an agency in Columbus that doesn't assist across the river too. So again, the same thing. Everything goes through 211. Everything. We love the folks over across the river because honestly, to speak what Michelle was saying about higher end or more expensive, we can generally get our clients housed in Phoenix City, Russell County, a little bit cheaper than we can in Muskogee County. So yes, but everything starts with 211. And I'm going to be daring, and I'm going to put my cell number here. It's on all the time, and I will answer any questions. But again, everything has to start with coordinated entry to make sure we've assessed everybody's needs.
Okay, and then there's one more question from Cynthia, and she says, when you say affordable, do you need to be an LIHTC property or like?
No.
Also, or is there a rent schedule that will be shared
Yes.
if we fall
Yes.
into a category of affordable rent?
We can send you all of that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Denise, go ahead.
There's one more, and it's from Yuvashi in Georgetown. She has 24 units. How does she get on the list? She's wanting to know. She just needs to contact you directly?
Oh, in Quitman. So
Yes.
Janice, all of our partners will be preying on you. A and E, both things. But in regards to the conversation about tenants and Lindsay's question, Janice and Terry, do you want to kind of talk about what it looks like at New Horizons? Either one?
If I can, I will let Terry speak since I'm new to the Pat's shaking her head like, yeah. I'll let Terry speak because again, I'm here trying to gain that information, and I was just getting ready to type it into the chat. If the person from Quitman County, Georgetown, if I can get that information, that would be great. So I can reach out and I can get her number so, you know, we can communicate and I can get what I need and do some things. So I'll just let Terry speak.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Basically just sorry, Lindsay, it was your question.
Well, mainly it was about the prevention funds and then about how it gets started. And Ms. Frey mentioned she answered that question, but I do have a question in reference to the prevention funds on whether or not we know our company has properties in other states and they have already issued funds pretty quickly, but Georgia seems to be a little different. So does anybody know as to when the possibility, Mrs. Frey, you mentioned the memorandum, and I wasn't sure if that played a part. So I'd really like to know if there's any information on that, because several of us do have residents that are great residents, but they are having trouble, obviously, paying rent. And so just when we could expect that, if anybody knows.
I'm sorry, Lindsay, I have no idea. I just heard from Pat that it's going to be after the moratorium. So I'd have to check into that.
As it stands right now, the moratorium is due to expire in March. We are asking for, and we have a call every Thursday morning, Adam, Katie, myself, and some other folks at DCA to get updates or answer questions or whatever. And we ask every week, is there an update? Because there is an executive order that was signed about some flexibilities with prevention, but there was no guidance that came with that. So as soon as we know something, I swear you will probably hear me screaming in your offices, because we've been sitting on this waiting to start writing those checks. So more information to come. We'll send it directly to Denise and say, hey, it's open. And then
I do have a question. Would it be beneficial for those of us that have residents that need those prevention funds? Would it be better for them to go ahead and call 211 now to get in the system versus when we get notified the funds are there and then they bottleneck the system?
Yeah, we tried that. We've already asked that, and no, you cannot have an intake prior to the project becoming online. So, however, with the I put our website address on there. In fact, I will go just a second and do the link to the actual form. It's an online form. That's our 211 intake. It goes directly to the 211 operators, so it can be turned around literally within minutes to make sure that those things happen, Michelle. We will work to make sure that everyone gets through the system very quickly. But yeah, we can't have someone that's sitting in the queue waiting. They cannot have an enrollment date prior to.
There's a question from Angie Lytle with Flournoy Properties. They have properties scattered all over the country, really, and have some in Florida. She's asking, who would they contact for their Florida properties? Is there a same, Florida Department of Affairs? Okay.
I'm happy to look that up. I can pull it from the HUD website to see who received those funds. If I guess that would be a Panhandle County. So so if you can send me an email with the counties that you serve, I'm happy to look up that information and let you know at least who has the money. Now, they kind of like us at Georgia DCA, they then may have funneled it to more more local agencies to actually do the services. But we can certainly find out who the best contacts are there.
And I was gonna add, we do have a couple of service providers that we work with with Georgia DCA, who also serve in Florida. So we can definitely put you into contact with those folks as well.
Thank you.
This is Louis. Can I make one other comment about these prevention funds? Lindsay, thank you very much for asking that question, because that's really the question everybody has. Prevention funds should be available and to help the tenants and the landlords that are currently in real trouble. And so that when I think about prevention funds, it's preventing eviction by providing funds to the landlord directly. And there's not a program. And I'm hoping that Adam and Pat and Katie and all of us will answer that question. But Lindsay, I can tell you for sure that on working with this, Michelle and myself and now you, we're going to keep on asking this question until we get an answer. Because why else should we get together if we can't figure out how we're going to help one another money-wise? Because the landlords have been quiet for all year long because they can't do it. But to address what Pat and the real theme is being, we need to be one voice locally. And not only that, I would be very hesitant if we got an award for a whole bunch of money and we didn't know exactly how we were going to get it out to the landlords and the tenants quickly. If we have in place a loose group like this that's working on it, and the COC folks like us that are following it up constantly, I think something will happen. But of course, Pat, she knows a awful lot she can't tell us because it's not a matter of trust. It's a kind of, she gets all kind of affirmative money that might be coming your way, but until she gets it, there's no need of talking about it, because there's an awful lot of stuff out there that we need to stop talking about it, other than to be prepared locally. When this comes, we know who, and we're going to put it out so that it won't be a mess. So I'll quit talking about that, but you just know I'm gonna get that question answered.
I appreciate you saying that, Louis, because in preparation for knowing that we were going to meet today, we've gone back and forth amongst our small group about having a flow on what the workflow looks like and how the whole process works. And I says, we get it all put together. We're ready to go. I'm not putting it out there. We cannot, we were not going to put it out there until we know the money's in the hand. We have the contract, we have the guarantees, but until it has been released, I don't want to promise something we can't deliver on tomorrow. And that's where I think we start with that honest conversation. I will tell you everything we have, everything we know, what we can and can't do. And from there, we can build, but we're not going to make promises we can't fulfill.
And then that's why Katie and I are here, to make these conversations happen and to do some of the outreach to you all as property owners and property managers to, whereas they might not have the bandwidth right now because of all the other different plates that all of our organizations are spinning. We're happy to take this one at least to make these conversations happen and to let you know that there will be to make this working group work. So we're glad that everyone joined us today.
Is there any other questions anybody has for the panel that's providing the information? I know we need to start wrapping up pretty soon. Please feel free to speak or ask questions. You can put them in the chat box, or you can email me. I am going to take this recording and send it to everybody that I have on email. There's a few people I'm not sure that got the link that I don't have contact information, but I'll also add it to our website if anybody wants to go back and revisit. But I will share the contact information to each person. Ms. Pat?
Yeah, I was going to say one last thing you said onto your website. I would love for our marketing folks to send you some links to different things on our website as well. Again, just so everybody knows what's available and how to access, if nothing else, but to start those conversations. That'd be great.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
And also, I'm going to speak for me and Mr. Louie. Me and Mr. Louie have started the ad hoc landlord committee with the COC Board of Directors. We invite any property managers, landlords that want to be in this conversation more in depth to please reach out to either one of us. We would love to sit down with you and get more people involved, because it just takes 2 or 3 to get started, and then we can make it move and get it where we want it to go. So please, if you're interested in being part of the landlord committee or meeting, whatever, let us know. We'll definitely, me and Louie talk probably once or twice a week, every week, and just throw back ideas and bounce things off each other about getting more people involved. So please, if you want to be more involved, let us know.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mr. Louie, too. It was nice to hear what you both had to say as well. And I'm sure you'll have some involvement from the CAA members, because Michelle's the one that originally brought this to our attention in a manager's meeting a couple of months ago. So we're thankful for the information. So any other questions before we conclude? Well, Adam, I thank you. Katie, Louie, Janice, Terry, Miss Pat, anybody I've forgotten, we really appreciate the information. And like I said, we'll share it. We'll send out the contact information, or you can reach me at the Apartment Association email. It's info@greatercaaonline.org. You can also find us on Facebook or on our website, but just reach out and I'll share the information. And thank you again so much. We really appreciate your time that you've taken today. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Glad to meet everyone.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
Looking forward to working with you all going forward.
Definitely. Bye, y'all. Thank you. I'm going to end.